So I'm going to give you a video with one of the best pieces of information if you can see it happening. If you can see this in your life, then this piece or this tool that I'm going to give you is an amazing way in which you can begin to always be able to bring yourself back to your center. So the center I will describe as, or what we can describe as, love. When you are feeling content, when you are feeling at ease, when you are feeling at peace with yourself, this is what I would call your center. But what happens is when we introduce a negative belief, we introduce a negative emotion within that center, the center begins to contract. We begin to feel resistance, we begin to feel a tension. And that tension comes from the resistance towards whatever that emotional belief is, or that emotional experience that we may have had in the past. So, when we relate emotionally, which is what we do as human beings until we've awakened, we relate to everything emotionally. So all of the negative experiences, negative beliefs that you've had in your past, you relate to through the present. So you look through the present of the eyes of the past. And when you come up against stuff that you haven't accepted in yourself, whether that's an experience, whether that's a belief you haven't about yourself, whenever you come up against this reaction, you feel a tension. And this tension is the lack of acceptance, the lack of conscious integration, the lack of accepting that part. So it could be a part of ourselves. So say for instance, we're using the part of unworthiness. When we haven't accepted unworthiness, and that emotion comes up and it's triggered and it's brought up into the present, the inability to accept that part is what creates the resistance towards it. So all of the resistance you feel in your lives, which is your negative thinking, which is your negative emotions, is the resistance towards these parts. So what we do is we recognize these parts of us, and as we do this work, then as soon as that part is triggered, the emotion is triggered and it comes up, we're instantly aware of it, and then we can begin to relax, which means the relaxing is really about the acceptance of that part. You're accepting that part to be, accepting it. What actually happens is, as you accept the tension, because this is, you're no longer contracting with that part, and instead when you accept, there's no resistance, and that part can begin to dissolve again, can come back to its center. So you begin to come back to your center. So if you look at your center as like your wholeness, your unity, but then you look within that center, there's parts that you haven't fully accepted, and it's to see these parts as the resistance in your life. This is what, when we haven't accepted something, it shows up as resistance. Like we can't accept something in our reality, whether that's something that's painful, whether it's us seeing our own unworthiness, whether it's seeing ourselves. So we have to come away from our reality, and we have to work on this integration process. We have to work on this acceptance. We have to work on taking the resistance out of it. And the only way you take resistance out of anything is through acceptance. So this really becomes like, the more you awaken, the more deeper, the greater your ability to master your reality, which is to master your emotions. When we're talking about mastering reality, we're talking about the ability to master your emotions, to master your thoughts, to understand where everything comes from, to understand, to be so self-aware that when we feel an emotion, we're able to automatically understand it, process it, and sink back into a state of acceptance. And as we begin this practice of acceptance and understanding, then we no longer get pulled in these patterns of resistance, which look like, or which show up as negative thinking in our lives, which show up as negative emotions in our lives. So this is really like a key to self-mastery, to notice the resistance, to understand the resistance that you feel, and then begin to do this integration work where you're no longer in resistance to these parts, you're no longer in resistance to your past. And then over time, with this practice, you can continuously come back to your center. So you might feel the emotion as it comes, you see it, and then you drop back into your center, and then something else might come up and you might see the emotion, but you see it and then you drop back to your center. What you're doing is you're dissolving the past in you, you're dissolving the past emotion, you're dissolving your past association with trauma, you're dissolving your past association with beliefs. negative beliefs that no longer serve you. And over time you will harness the ability to stay in your center, which means to stay grounded, to be in a state of love, which is to be in a state of full acceptance of yourself. And then when we're talking about gaining this level of mastery within yourself, now you can master your reality. Now you can be more aligned with your purpose, more aligned with however that purpose wishes to show up. So just a quick example, like for me speaking, you know, going back when I held a lot of unworthiness, it would trigger unworthiness to come up, and it would trigger self-judgment to come up. But as I've realized these parts, understood these parts, and integrated these parts, the moment they show up in my life, there's an instant acceptance, an instant understanding, which allows the emotion to dissolve back into love, back into the core, and that brings you back to your own stability. But it takes time, and it is a practice. But the most important thing is the resistance, because the resistance is the lack of acceptance, and the lack of acceptance is showing what parts of you that you're at war with yourself, which shows up as negative thinking. Anyway, till next one, much love.